Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. You're listening to Sunday Talks on a Wednesday with Kellie and Lisa. Life happens, and you just roll with the punches. So we are here today instead of on a Sunday. But I am Kellie, and Lisa is also on IB leave. Good morning, Lisa, or afternoon, actually.
Good afternoon, Kellie.
Yeah, it's been a confusing day. It's like, wait, it's Sunday. No, it's Wednesday. No, it's whatever day it is. Here we are. We've had some comments from the last show we did, and we wanted to start the show with addressing those first. Lisa, you want to talk a little bit about what you heard?
Sure. So I apologize if there's some weird background noise. I'm in transition right now. One of the comments that I received that I thought was really interesting that we needed to dive in a little bit deeper on, a person commented about the challenge that I said, I don't even remember the exact wording, but that I would challenge or I would take on a challenge if, somebody could have a debate with me over the concept of self-love and loving other people. And someone had commented that, what about the relationship between parent and child, that, we as parents love our children and that it doesn't necessarily have to wrap back around to self-love. I know you and I have talked about that offline a little bit, and in fact, I even had a conversation with said person regarding this topic, but I thought that would be something interesting to address and discuss the 4 levels of love, depending on what your belief system is, but how true love towards a child. I know a lot of really bad parents who don't love themselves, and therefore, in turn, their children feel that as well. So I just thought this would be a great topic to roll into our money talks later on.
Right. And, I know somebody listening right now is saying, but what does love have to do with money? But it really, really does. Everything starts with love. Everything is all about love. Everything is really about, you have to love yourself first. And I've known some really horrible parents myself who clearly did not love themselves. And while they would say the word, I love you, to their kids, it didn't convey a meaning. There was no substance behind the words. And I think a lot of us say I love you so easily without meaning. Between a parent and child, some parents just say they love their kids because they think they're supposed to love their kids. A lot of people do not know what love is. People associate love with, I fed you, so I must love you. Or, I take you to and from your school, so I must love you. And while those things can indeed go along with love, doing something out of duty or a feeling of responsibility is not the same as truly loving your kids or your significant other or your friends or whoever it is. And really, until you really love yourself and accept yourself, complete and total acceptance goes along with love. Love is completely unconditional. And I know from working with and mentoring abused kids in the foster care system through the years, periodically, that a lot of these kids feel anything but love. When you grow up with your parents saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then you, just through being young and foolish, make a bad decision, and then all of a sudden everything changes with your parents, and they no longer even acknowledge your presence. Is that really unconditional love? The old thing, you made your bed, now you must lie in it. Is that really love? I know people used to call it tough love. but that's not really showing love. And I know that's a more complicated issue. It depends on the history and blah, blah, blah. But true love is truly unconditional. And one of the most wonderful things I ever heard a parent say to a child was, I'm unhappy with your decisions. And I know that you should have made better decisions and you should have known better. But I will love you through you dealing with your decisions, although I'm not going to fix it for you. And I just thought, what a wonderful thing, because that's a parent who truly is showing their kid that they love them. And maybe that all goes back to previous generations where the, spare the rod, spoil the child thing. So many adults today don't know what love is because they were never shown love. They never experienced love. So, yes, it does have to start with you. If you do not truly love and accept every piece of yourself, you can only love other people to the extent that you love yourself. Does that make sense?
Point, yes, because there are different levels of love. And I don't even like that terminology that I just used. But, there's where you are right now on your enlightenment journey, or your, where you are right now is how you meet people and where you are able to meet people from your perspective. So you might not have reached the higher level of love, let's just say, for lack of terminology right now. You might not have reached a heightened state of love, but that's your level of love. And the acceptance of others does go hand in hand with that. You said with I don't like your decision that you've made, I was reminded of the love the sinner, hate the sin, or,
right.
Don't agree with the sin or whatnot. And that's a really nice way to view your relationship with others. I don't like what you're doing. I don't like the choices that you've made, but that doesn't mean that I can't love you, and love is acceptance, even if it's not the choice that we prefer. It's still accepting them for who they are, where they are right now on their own journey, and continuing to love them, even if they aren't making the decisions or the choices that we agree with or that we approve of.
Right. And, some of the different kinds of love evolve. I honestly believe, and it's been proven to me time and time again, that true unconditional love never goes away. Once you love someone, you always love them, no matter how badly they've hurt you or how badly they've acted or what they've done. You always love them. And I know I have said that in a group of recently divorced women over 50, and I got some pushback on that. Oh, I can't love him after what he did to me. Yeah, you can. You can be disappointed in someone you love. You can be hurt by someone you love. Love grows up. Love is not stagnant. Love evolves. Love changes, but it always remains. It never goes away. So one of the things that I used to coach people to do, especially if they've been through something traumatic, either an illness or loss of a job or divorce or whatever, take some of that love that you have felt for the person who hurt you most and flip it back on yourself. Even if it's just for a little while. I used to tell people, take 1 minute of love every morning, first thing, and sit with yourself and say, I love you unconditionally, and use your name. I love you, and mine was, I love you, Kellie, unconditionally, and I always will. And, no matter what happens, I will always love you. And we've talked about mirror work in the past, and that is the most powerful way to do that, is to look yourself in the eyes in the mirror. But if the first thing you do before you even get out of bed is open your eyes and say that, that will go a long way to creating that type of unconditional self-love that really does form the foundation for everything else in our lives.
I think there's a difference between like and love. And in fact, I know there is. And,
always
I'm always brought back to my religious upbringing and the transitions that I've made to who I am now with my religious upbringing. And I'm always reminded of Christ. He loved everybody. But here's where the love everyone but hate the sin comes into play. He loved everyone. He accepted everyone for where they were and offered nothing but pure, unconditional love. He sacrificed himself. That is the greatest demonstration of love is that sacrifice. I think a lot of us sacrifice ourselves on the daily when we stay in relationships that are toxic or abusive because we feel like we have to, and there's a sense of duty. We don't have to do have that love for them. And I agree with what you said, and I just think that there's just a lot of confusion about it because there are different levels of love. I love you in ways that I don't love my boyfriend. But my boyfriend and I have a couple of different types of love for each other. The stranger on the street, I want good things for them. I want, them to be happy. I want them to be fulfilled. I don't want them hurting. And that is a form of love. That is an expression of love, wanting what's best for them. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to take all of them on as my friends and try to fix them or help them. I know before the show I said something about I'm not going to give everybody that I see on the street a doll, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to send positive vibes their way. And it doesn't mean that I don't want what's best.
Right.
I don't follow religion anymore, but, I do try to live up to that standard.
And sometimes it's really difficult. That's
yes.
That's one of the things. During the last year, the what I'm now referring to as the COVID era, a lot of people have really struggled with loving their fellow man. They just don't. They just don't anymore. They've blocked off that piece of them. I had someone tell me they were refusing to go into the downtown area of the big city they live in because they knew those homeless people hadn't been vaccinated. And I thought, well, wow, what a weird thing for this particular person to be saying. But that's the stress. That's the COVID overload. We are all overloaded with the divisive language that we have heard, over the last year or so. And it's sad to me to hear otherwise loving, accepting people say something like that. But that's kind of, the truth of where we are as humanity right now. Many people who would usually be loving and kind are kind of pulling back from that. And that doesn't necessarily mean they've stopped loving humanity. That means their fear has taken over and they are too afraid to continue expressing that former loving kindness they used to express. That's a different thing. My friend has a grandson that I used to spend a lot of time with, and he said, I asked him once, he says, well, I have a girlfriend at school and I really like her. And I said, oh, you do? And he said, yeah, I don't love her, but I like her a lot. And I said, well, wow, what's, bear in mind, this is a young child. He said, well, I like her a lot and I like spending time with her, but I don't think I'd die for her. And that in that young kid's mind, and you just said the example he used. He said, Jesus loves me, and he died for me. I wouldn't do that for her, so I don't love her. But I like her a lot. And I thought, wow, from the mouths of babes, sometimes, even though he was a little skewed in his example, still, it was kind of true. There are many, many people that I like, some that I like an awful lot. I don't know that I would make a big sacrifice for them. If one of them were in a dire situation, of course I would help. But I don't think I would willingly call and say, you know what, I'm not using this car, you can have it. Where I have actually done that with friends that I have loved.
Right.
And, confusing that situation further is the difference between loving someone and lust. A lot of people confuse loving someone and infatuation. And infatuation is that, that lust. Wow, it's new, it's different, it's wonderful, I must love this person a lot. And in talking with several of the formerly mentioned divorced women, everyone has said the same thing. Their significant other or their husband, whichever the case was, that left them for somebody younger, thinks that younger person is the love of their life. After 2 or 3 months or, up to a year. And it's really interesting to me how these men are using lust as an excuse to not fix themselves with their peace. When a relationship, any relationship breaks up, doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, both parties to that relationship bear some responsibility and have to look at their own peace in what led to that. So when you have someone, and a friend of mine was married for 48 years, 48, and her husband of 48 years walked out one day and said he had found the love of his life. She was 45, so she wasn't even born when they were married. And he said she's the love of his life. She makes him so happy. She makes him, feel so loved and so alive. Well, yeah, of course she would. She's, less than half your, or over half your age. And that's lust. That comes from fear. That comes from fear of, oh my God, I'm getting old. I'm going to die soon. There's less life ahead of me than behind me. How can I feel young again? That's where that comes from. And it doesn't just happen with men. Women have been known to do that too. And quite honestly, I wish more of them would do that because I think it would open up that particular conversation. If you really love someone, you can fix anything through counsel. It's just if you want to. We have a caller.
Right.
Hello, you are on the air. Did you have a question?
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, we'll call back if you need to.
Yeah, we had it flashed twice and then it disconnected, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But that's okay. Really interesting when you start talking about different kinds of love. It's really interesting where the conversation can go. I kind of like to bridge what we've been talking about and talk about self-love again. And as it relates to law of attraction, we've done series after series on law of attraction. And still people will call and they will tell me, I don't understand, it doesn't work for me. And anytime something doesn't work, you kind of trace back, if it's an electrical problem, sorry, could talk there, you trace back till you find the piece that's broken. And a lot of the time, The piece that's broken is us. You know, the universe, God, whoever you want to attribute this to, will only give you what you feel like you deserve. And so many of us are blocking wonderful things that we want in our lives because we just don't love ourselves. At the core of not loving yourself is a feeling of worthlessness. You know, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel worthy of love. So if you convince yourself you're not worthy of love, you've convinced yourself you're not worthy of all those wonderful things you really, really, really want. So in laying the groundwork, you need to look at your relationship with yourself first before you look at any other relationship, because that's where it starts. Each of us, we all start with ourselves. We have so many calling again, and I am trying.
Okay, is that better?
Hello?
Oh, hello.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to make a comment. You know, my wife and I, we were just talking the other day, and, you know, when you said about being married for, you know, over 40 years and finding the love of your life, my wife and I, we've been married for 35 years, and we were just having this conversation the other day because, you know, I mean, every marriage goes through problems, you know. I mean, I don't care what it is. And I asked her, I said, you know, what made our marriage last this long? Because, you know, a lot of times that I'll see friends that I haven't seen for, you know, 15, 20 years, and they're on their, you know, second, third, fourth marriage or whatever. And I was curious, you know, because, you know, there's been a lot of times where I don't know how we stayed, you know, together. And it's just interesting because, you know, I think a lot of things is we become selfish. You know, I think you're right. I think you hit on a lot of key points, you know, like I think there was a lot of times in our marriage that I was selfish. She was, you know what I mean? So right. I think there's a lot of, I think if you take accountability, you know, for yourself and your own actions. And then the other thing too is, you know, marriages become stale is what I meant. And, you know, when you first met each other, you would walk over glass or through fire, but then it just becomes stagnant, that marriage alive, you know, and do those special things for each other.
Right. And sometimes it happens that one person will do that and the other person will not. And that's when we have more problems too. So thank you. Thank you so much for calling in. I'm getting an echo on your phone, so I'm going to mute you right now. But thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Thank you
so
much.
I want to expand on what he said as well. And thank you so much for calling in, because a lot of times couples become like this one, and you're supposed to become one, but to the point where they lose who they are, they lose their own individuality, and all of a sudden the mom who, for example, who stayed home for all of these years, and now her kids are grown and they're in college and they're off on their own, and she's like, what do I do now? If that's all that she dedicated her time to, she's left with this sense of wondering and the empty nest syndrome. And there's a lot of different things that can keep your individuality and still love somebody and still be in a very healthy relationship. You don't have to give up all of that. And I think that's where a lot of people confuse love with, I have to have every ounce of my time has to be dedicated to my family and soccer practice and, you know, dance rehearsal and picking them up and dropping them off and making all these nutritious meals. And I'm really coming from a woman's perspective, my perspective on this one. But I think that's what a lot of people, you know, the guy or the breadwinner, let me even take the word guy out of there, the breadwinner goes to work and you know, puts all this energy into this job, 50, 60 hours a week, exhausted, comes home, laundry needs to be done, kids need to be bathed, food needs to be cooked. There's just so many external factors. and that we kind of compartmentalize ourselves into this is my role, and we just throw everything into those roles and forget that, hey, at one time I like gather with my friends and shoot some hoops or play cards or, you know, whatever in the case may be. And so you just kind of become numb to existing. And so you're
right.
surviving instead of actually living. I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
And I think people need to communicate better when one person is feeling like they are being overwhelmed with responsibilities in the family and the other person doesn't recognize it. That's a big thing. Communication, you have to speak up. You are never going to get what you want if you don't ask for it. I've seen in coaching, I've seen a lot of relationship trouble that began and ended with someone, one or the other, or even both of the people in that relationship refusing to communicate. And you absolutely have to. So, yeah, absolutely. That also, lack of communication, also goes back to fear and a lack of love for yourself. That goes back to, I don't want to speak up because I am afraid if I say what I want, this other person won't like it. And that's, again, self-love. You have to be in a wonderful, loving, successful relationship. I'm having trouble talking today. Tired, I guess. You have to have that self-love. You have to love yourself enough to realize you deserve to be loved. You deserve to be talked to and treated with respect and all of these things that go into a relationship. But then again, a relationship is a choice. And you can love someone with all of your heart and they still don't belong in your life. And you have to love yourself enough to realize that. So it all goes back to self-love. Really, it all does. I had a client one time who had I don't know. I used to tell her she may be addicted to junk cars. I think we should have a support group because she would have a car and it would break, and she always bought 20 or 30-year-old cars, and it would break. And instead of fixing it, she would go and she would get another junk car, and it would break. And eventually, this woman had 9 broken cars on her property. And I asked her, she didn't have to buy broken cars. She didn't have to buy old junk cars. She could have bought herself a new vehicle, and she could have afforded the payments on it. But someone told her a long time ago that she would never have a new car, and she believed them. And that's like, we've talked in the past about your money story. If you are told in your life enough times that you are not worth money, or that rich people are not nice people, or you'll never be anything, that's what we believe. That affects our relationship with ourselves. And I've seen it so often. That's a lack of self-love. That's when you feel like you are unworthy of things that you really want. That is a lack of self-love. And that does definitely impact every other aspect of your life, whether you're talking about a relationship or a good job or a car, having money in the bank. It all comes back to what you feel you're worthy of. What do you think about that?
I want to go back to our caller because, first of all, congratulations on 35 years of marriage. I've been divorced twice. So, but I can attest to the situations that I was involved in were because of how I felt about myself, how worthy I felt. And And then when I found the good guy a couple of times, I pushed them away because something in me said I can't have that relationship. Now, I'm not saying perfect, because there takes a certain amount of grit. There takes a certain amount of commitment. There takes a certain amount of codependency, because there might be days where I'm really high on self-love, and there are maybe days where I'm in the dumpster with self-love. And I noticed that the way that I feel and what situation mentally I'm going through, physically that I'm going through, whether it's a bad day at work or whatever, does revolve around how confident and how good I feel in the Lisa department. Like I said, sometimes I'm in the basement. Sometimes I am on that rooftop, I don't even want to call it a balcony, that rooftop balcony, taking it all in. Like, I am high as a kite on Lisa. And then some days I'm like, no, this isn't good. So it ebbs and it flows, but it all really is interconnected. And when I can look back at these relationships that I've been in, I can absolutely narrow it down to my own perspective of myself, how I felt about myself, how I loved myself, my view of worthy. And while oh my goodness, and we can't even take the time right now to get into the external factors like alcohol that was involved, or, just all of these other things, the excuses that I made and whatnot, to be with people who were apparently supposed to be in my life to teach me those lessons. But sometimes I got a repeat lesson, and I blamed it on the universe. Like, there are no good guys. Why can't I find somebody to love me? Well, take a second and realize that it's because you don't even like yourself right now.
Right.
So going back to the caller's comment, relationships do become stagnant, and some relationships, not all of them, become stagnant. Some relationships are built on on an unhealthy level, if you will, and just the determination and the dedication, but also not only to somebody else, but to yourself. I know some people who stayed married for a very long time because it's what they were supposed to do, but they probably shouldn't have. And then I know some people who have not stayed married for a very long time. I don't know. It's a beautiful thing, and I really wish I had longevity in a relationship more than what I've had. But as I was personally growing and that person couldn't grow with me, or I, discovered that it was a really unhealthy relationship, I would walk away. And I don't feel any shame in that. I just wish that there was a time where I had met somebody, who, when I felt at the top of my A game, and even though I was thriving career-wise or whatnot, I was still attracting these really bad relationships to myself. And it was because of really how I truly felt about me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, relationships, like I said, are a choice, and sometimes people don't understand that relationships are a choice. Loving someone else is actually a choice. And sometimes people are so out of whack within themselves that they don't realize that they are subconsciously making choices that may or may not be what they really want. And I know I've done that in the past with different relationships. And I think that kind of plays into what you were talking about too. When we're not in touch who we are and we don't feel good about who we are, we make very different choices. Sometimes we make very wrong choices. I know I can count at least a couple of past relationships where I just sort of fell into the relationship. It was like a first date that lasted for a couple of years. Yeah. And it wasn't a conscious choice. It was oh, okay, I guess I'll do this for a while. And it wasn't healthy, and it wasn't good for either party. And finally, one day it was just, hey, I think I'm going to move on. Okay, bye. You know, it was just such a romantic-less, love-less relationship. I mean, we liked each other, yes. And certainly there was some level of love there just because we had spent so much time together. But in the larger scheme of things, that was truly a relationship that was a non-relationship. We never made that decision consciously to be in one. So when it ended, we were both like, okay, do something else now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many people, people do that. And, you know, it's not a conscious choice. It's an unconscious choice. And it's never a good one. Yeah. That was fun at the time.
And a lot of my relationships were something that I just fell into. It was like, okay, yeah, let's just do this. It wasn't necessarily on a, let me think about this and let me really evaluate if this should be something that I should get into. It was just it was convenient. I want a boyfriend. Okay, you want to be my boyfriend? Great, let's do this. You know, it was not the smartest decisions in the world. I learned a lot from those. I love that I can poke fun at myself. But, you know, it was, I was confused about who I was and what I wanted. And so I wasn't, and I didn't have faith that what I wanted would actually come to fruition. So I just settled on the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, trying to fulfill some things. I also didn't heal some of the things from my childhood. My little girl was still screaming at me. You know, my inner child, not my actual child, my inner child, my little girl was still screaming at me on things that needed to be healed. So I was finding people who aligned with what needed to be healed to see those lessons, to have those lessons and to try to fix it and learn from it. And I failed miserably many times over. So now I'm working on that part of myself to heal those things that need to be healed so that I can therefore manifest things that I truly want. Speaking of manifesting, you did mention the law of attraction, and yes, we've done many series on those. But one thing that a lot of teachers of the subject fail to teach is all of the other things, the 11 other laws that come along with manifestation. And that's something that I think you and I are planning on doing in a future series after we do our money series, doing the 12 universal laws and bringing them all together. But, you know, those other laws do play into that. And if you're not careful and you just say things like, I want a boyfriend, or I want a best friend, it doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship. It can be a platonic relationship. It can be, you mentioned work relationship, or your best friend, or your social circle. Then you can have bad relationships there too. And it's okay to still love somebody from a distance if that's what you need to do.
Yeah, that's definitely something we need to talk about, because the thing that trips people up is you still have to do the work. And the work does not necessarily mean go get a job. It can be the work on yourself. It can be having faith in yourself. So, and being very specific. You know, you don't want to just say, well, I need to have a boyfriend right now. Because usually if you're saying you need something, that means you need to do the work within yourself. Needing something and wanting something are very, very different. And what I have found through experience and a couple of teachers I've encountered along the way is anytime we say, I need, when we are talking about the law of attraction, or spirituality, not something like I need to find $20 to pay my light bill. That's different need. When we are talking about we need something in the spiritual realm or with the law of attraction, that means we need to look at ourselves and make sure we're ready for what we're asking for and be very, very specific. You know, I know someone, an author, who recently said, you know, you told me you gave me advice on doing a ritual to bring money into my life, and I guess it worked. I got a royalty payment of $1.07. I'm like, you know what? Be grateful for that $1.07. You know? Yeah. Because he wasn't being specific enough. And when we're working with universal laws, spiritual laws, whatever you want to call them, you really need to be specific enough. And you really need to make sure you're doing the work you need to do on yourself before you even start trying to manifest something. Or, you know, it'll work, but not maybe the way you wanted it to. So, yeah, we need to talk about that on a future series.
Love is confusing.
Yep. Well, love is always confusing. But the thing to know about love is that's what affects everything. Everything relies on love. Self-love is number one. Feeling like you are, and that would probably be getting into the 12 spiritual laws, but feeling a sense of oneness with the universe, that you are surrounded by love and support, whether no matter what religion you are, you know, whether you are deeply spiritual, deeply religious, something in between, feel like you are completely loved and supported by the universe, and that what you do, whether you realize it or not, has an impact on every single person around you or anyone you encounter. And that's where it starts. I mean, it really does start with that. And when you look at trying to love unconditionally, it really becomes not so complicated. It's like, well, I love me, and that's where it starts. We complicate things needlessly as a human being. We just do that. It's sort of this little game we play with ourselves. We take something that is intrinsically simple, and we make it as complicated as we possibly can. And that's a lot of issues that people have around love, because it really isn't that complicated. If you're making it complicated or it starts feeling complicated, take a giant step back and ask yourself, what is this triggering in me? Why is this making me feel like love is complicated? Because it really isn't. And love is what makes everything else work. It all comes down to love. So I will get off my soapbox about that now. What else do you want to talk about?
I think that was actually a perfect way to end the show.
Yeah, and we are wrapping up with time here. Thank you guys for listening. I'm a little off today because I'm very, very tired, but hopefully you got something out of the show. Thank you, caller, for calling in. I'm sorry, I was having just a horrible, horrible echo in my headset here. But, yeah, tune in Sunday. We'll be back on Sunday. It will really be Sunday when we come back, and have a very, very, very blessed days between now and then. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to like and share the show. Yep. And we'll see you on Sunday. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.